doors aren't meant to be opened, but what happens when you were born to open one? When Jonathan inherits a mysterious ancient book, the Nether Codex, he is pulled into a terrifying legacy of forbidden knowledge, unspeakable rituals, and bloodlines tied to entities beyond reality itself. As the threshold calls, Jonathan must confront the horrifying truth. This was never random. He was chosen long before he was even born, but escaping the maw may not mean escaping its reach. Prepare to journey into a world where cosmic horror bleeds into the fabric of everyday life, and where some doors, once crossed, will follow you home. Some items should never change hands. The auctioneer's voice cut sharply through the heavy stillness of the old Greywater Cove Community Center. His words echoed off the water-stained wooden beams and faded red velvet curtains that hung like tired sentinels above the small crowd. The air smelled of sea salt, mildew, and something older, the musk of forgotten things being dragged into the light for one final transaction. Jonathan Blake sat in the second row, his eyes narrowing on the object that had just been unveiled. It lay at the center of a simple wooden table, surrounded by a few half-hearted bidders more interested in porcelain figurines and vintage clocks. But Jonathan was transfixed. Wrapped in a heavy oilcloth, the shape was unmistakably that of a book, though even from this distance it pulsed with a presence that made his skin crawl. The auctioneer, a balding, heavy-set man with thick glasses perched too low on his nose, spoke with an indifferent rhythm, as though eager to move through the remainder of the estate sale. "Lot number 74, he intoned. An unidentified antique book found in the effects of the late Mrs. Caldwell. No title, no publication date. Bound in some sort of leather. His voice hesitated for a fraction of a second before pressing on. Opening bid, $20. Jonathan's heart pounded. He wasn't sure why. Dozens of books had passed through his hands before. Relics from collapsed libraries, abandoned churches, private collections gathering dust for generations. But this one whispered to him. Though no words were spoken, he raised his hand. 20. The auctioneer barely glanced up. 20 from the gentleman in the second row. Do I hear 30? Silence. The room seemed to shrink. A few attendees looked nervously at the book, shifting in their chairs, as though sharing a silent unease they couldn't articulate. 30? The auctioneer tried once more. A pause. Sold. To the gentleman for $20. The gavel came down with a dull wooden thud. Jonathan exhaled slowly. As the attendant carefully wrapped the book back into its weathered oilcloth, Jonathan approached the payment desk with steady legs, though his insides felt anything but calm. Strange one, that, the attendant said conversationally as he handed over the bundle. Doesn't even have a title. Gives me the willies, if I'm honest. Jonathan forced a polite smile. All the better for my collection. The man shrugged, already moving on to the next lot. Jonathan exited into the gray drizzle outside, his breath misting in the cold October air. The sky above Greywater Cove was a permanent shade of dull slate, as if the sun itself avoided lingering too long over this forgotten corner of Maine. Seagulls cried somewhere beyond the fog, their calls distant and thin. He gripped the parcel tightly as he walked toward his car parked by the empty harbor. The sound of waves slapping against the rocks below seemed louder tonight, almost as if they were keeping time with his heartbeat. By the time Jonathan arrived at his small rented cottage at the edge of town, night had fully descended. The streetlights buzzed with an anemic orange glow, their beams barely cutting through the thick coastal mist that rolled inland like some creeping entity. The house itself was modest, a weathered two-story with warped shutters and salt-stained siding, but it served his needs. Privacy, isolation, silence. He locked the door behind him, setting the parcel gently on the kitchen table. For a moment, he simply stared at it, heart thudding again. Why did it unsettle him so? Jonathan had always prided himself on his skepticism. The world of antique books and artifacts was filled with exaggerated tales and superstitions, myths that fascinated him academically but rarely stirred anything personal. Yet now, Standing alone with the book, he felt as though something unseen was leaning in close, breathing at the nape of his neck. He shook it off, reaching for a small utility knife. The oilcloth parted easily, revealing a leather surface that shimmered faintly under the kitchen light. Supple, almost fleshy. Jonathan blinked, resisting the urge to pull his hand back. The leather was unusually warm, not like dry old cowhide. It seemed to pulse subtly under his fingertips, as though it retained some lingering body heat. He ran his fingers across its surface, noting the complete absence of any printed title. Instead, at its center was a symbol pressed into the leather, a complex geometric design of concentric circles split by jagged lines. The pattern seemed to ripple slightly, bending at the corner of his vision whenever he tried to focus on its details. The deeper he stared, the more wrong it felt. Not evil exactly, but foreign. Not for human eyes. A shiver ran through him. He opened the cover. The pages inside were brittle and yellowed with age, though oddly clean. The margins were crammed with tiny notations written in what looked like multiple hands, jagged, cramped, overlapping. Some of the ink had faded into oily rainbows, catching the light like slick gasoline on water. Even the printed text was an odd mixture of archaic phrases, dead languages, and fragments he could barely parse. Jonathan whispered aloud as if speaking to Grant himself. Notes, marginalia, perhaps field observations? But as he flipped through the first dozen pages, unease coiled tighter around his chest. Some of the passages shifted as he tried to read them. Paragraphs beginning mid-thought and ending abruptly. Diagrams whose angles seemed inconsistent depending on how long he stared at them. At the bottom of one page, a phrase in Latin caught his eye. Transgre dimini limen et omnio mutantur. He translated instinctively. Cross the threshold, and all things change. Jonathan exhaled sharply, his breath fogging the air. The room felt colder suddenly. The kitchen lights flickered briefly. Just the wiring, he told himself. He closed the book gently, running a hand across its disturbing cover once more. He should catalog it, document its condition, perhaps even contact a conservator before handling it further. That would be the professional thing to do. Instead, he stared at the symbol again, and the symbol, it seemed, stared back. As night deepened, Jonathan retired upstairs to his bedroom, though retired was perhaps too generous. Sleep was elusive. Every time he closed his eyes, fragments of odd geometric patterns floated behind his lids, accompanied by an intangible hum vibrating at the edges of his hearing. At one point, he swore he heard a whisper, faint, breathy, not coming from any direction but rather from within his own skull. Come closer. His eyes shot open, heart racing. He sat upright, staring into the darkness. The house was silent. Only the faint creaks of old wood settling under the coastal damp filled the air. Jonathan wiped sweat from his brow and glanced toward the full-length mirror across the room. For a fleeting moment, his own reflection seemed subtly off, like the angle of his jaw didn't quite match his movement, or his eyes lingered a moment too long after he turned his head. But when he focused, it was gone. Only his pale, sleep-deprived face stared back. "You're exhausted," he told himself. "You need rest." But deep down, Jonathan sensed something had begun, and there would be no turning back. The following morning arrived gray and damp, the kind of morning that made Greywater Cove feel even more remote than it was. Low clouds pressed down on the town like a lid sealing a jar, and the air reeked of brine and old fish carried in from the dock. Jonathan sat at his kitchen table, staring at the closed book resting like a coiled serpent on the table's surface. His coffee had long gone cold. He hadn't slept, not really. The few times he dozed off were interrupted by flashes of imagery that made no sense. Spiraling shapes, shifting corridors, a strange pulsating curtain of flesh that seemed to breathe like a lung. The whispers had returned as well. Always faint, just barely perceptible but constant, like a draft tickling his subconscious. "Come closer." The words had become a refrain. Jonathan pulled his gaze away from the book and stood, moving to the sink to pour his cold coffee down the drain. He stared out through the window into the foggy backyard, where the outline of the tree line blurred into indistinct shadows. He couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was just beyond that mist, watching. "Get a grip, Blake," he muttered. "You've dealt with cursed objects before, this is no different." But deep down he knew this was very different. Later that afternoon, he decided to begin the formal documentation process, at least as a way to reclaim some semblance of control. Jonathan set up his camera, tripod, and soft lighting in the small study he'd converted from the back room of the house. He laid the book on a clean felt surface, donning white cotton gloves, and carefully opened the cover. As the pages turned, the room seemed to darken slightly, despite the lamps burning on either side of him. The ink's iridescence shifted under the lights, like a thin film of oil moving atop water. Each page felt denser than the one before, as though the book itself were subtly resisting his inspection. He documented the strange marginalia meticulously. Strange glyphs, symbols unfamiliar to any alphabet he recognized. Occasional Latin passages interspersed with other, more indecipherable scripts. Some symbols closely resembled ritual diagrams. Circles intersected by triangles, enclosed by loops that terminated in sharp barbs. One particular diagram caught his eye. It appeared near the center of the book. A rough sketch of a jagged coastline, a system of caves drawn beneath a cliff face labeled only as Limen Vetitum. The forbidden threshold. Jonathan's breath caught. He recognized the topography, or at least it resembled certain areas of the coast not far from Greywater Cove. Places accessible only during extremely low tides, whispered about even by the local fishermen as cursed ground. Could it be? Could this place actually exist? As daylight faded, Jonathan flipped to what appeared to be one of the final sections of the book, a first-person account written in hurried, almost desperate script. "I have found it," it read. "The veil. It breathes, it pulses, it speaks in vibrations I do not understand, yet it calls me closer each night." The entry was signed, E.R.G. Caraway. The name rang a faint bell in Jonathan's mind, a reference he remembered encountering during his years studying obscure folklore at university. Caraway was rumored to have vanished mysteriously sometime in the early 19th century during an expedition along the Maine coast. His journals had never been recovered. Until now. Jonathan sat back, heart pounding. If this was truly Caraway's lost work, it represented not only an invaluable historical find, but something potentially far more dangerous. "Limen Vetitum," he whispered again. He couldn't help but glance toward the living room mirror from across the study. For a fraction of a second, his own reflection was again subtly wrong. Not an obvious change, just off, as though some version of himself from another reality was standing just slightly out of sync with his own body. He tore his eyes away. Nightfall brought with it an oppressive silence. The fog outside had grown thicker, curling around the cottage like pale, skeletal fingers. Jonathan sat in his armchair, staring at the closed book across the room. Despite his exhaustion, sleep refused him. The whispers had grown bolder as the sun dipped behind the cliffs. "Come closer. Join us." Jonathan closed his eyes, trying to push the voices away, but they seeped into the cracks of his mind like dampness into stone. His breathing grew shallow, his skin prickled, and then came this. At first, it was so faint that he dismissed it as the house settling, the occasional groan of old wood. But as the minutes ticked by, the scratching grew louder, more deliberate, rhythmic. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch, pause. The sound was coming from beneath him. Jonathan's eyes darted to the floorboards beneath his feet, suddenly hyper-aware of the cold air creeping up through the tiny gaps. The scratching continued, insistent, patient, deliberate. His throat tightened. He stood up, slowly tiptoeing toward the floor vent in the center of the room. The metal grate vibrated ever so slightly with each scrape beneath. He crouched low, hard hammering. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was only his breath, sharp and uneven, fogging in the cold room. And then, from beneath the vent, a whisper rose again, this time terrifyingly close. "We see you." Jonathan stumbled backward, his spine pressing against the far wall. His hands trembled as a cold sweat broke across his brow. The book remained motionless on the table, as if mocking him. The whispers returned, more urgent now. His ears rang with voices, speaking in languages he couldn't understand, layered atop one another like discordant hymns. The edges of the room seemed to warp ever so slightly, the corners darkening, the ceiling stretching just a little higher than it had been moments before. Jonathan squeezed his eyes shut, gripping his head. "Stop," he whispered. "Please stop." And then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the voices ceased. The house fell into an eerie, suffocating stillness. Jonathan's breath slowed. His pulse remained erratic, but the worst seemed to have passed for the moment. He opened his eyes. That's when he noticed it. On his right hand, just beneath the skin of his palm, faint, glowing lines had begun to form. The same jagged symbol embossed on the cover of the Nether Codex now shimmered beneath his flesh, as though branded from within, and it was spreading. Jonathan woke up in a cold sweat, his breath shallow, his sheets twisted into a cocoon of panic around his body. For a moment, he wasn't sure whether he was awake or still trapped inside the same sickly dream that had haunted him through the night. Shapes, impossible shapes, had twisted and danced behind his eyelids. The echoes of voices hummed like insects beneath his skin. As his heartbeat slowly steadied, his eyes drifted to the pale morning light creeping between the blinds. But something was wrong. The mirror. Across the room, the full-length mirror stood against the far wall, where it had always been. But this morning, the reflection was subtly misaligned. The furniture appeared slightly stretched, as if the glass was bending reality. Even his own image held an unnerving hesitation, blinking a fraction of a second too late. Jonathan sat up slowly, forcing himself to breathe. He rubbed his hands together, trying to shake off the chill that had taken root deep in his bones. Then his eyes fell on his right palm. The mark was still there, faint, like an ink stain trapped beneath the skin, but unmistakable. The same jagged symbol embossed on the Nether Codex, now living inside his flesh. "No," he whispered. He clenched his fist as though he could crush the mark out of existence. It pulsed faintly in response, as if mocking his feeble resistance. The cottage was cold that morning, the kind of damp chill that crept under doorways and along window panes, even with the heater humming. Jonathan moved downstairs and brewed coffee in silence, trying to ground himself in routine. The rich smell of brewing coffee usually offered some comfort, but not today. The book remained on the study table where he'd left it, closed but ever present. Even from across the room, he felt its presence like a low, constant hum inside his skull. He tried not to look at it directly, but his eyes wandered there regardless. Every time he blinked, strange geometric patterns pulsed behind his eyelids, spirals, eyes, thresholds. He could almost feel something vast pressing against the edges of his awareness, waiting. Focus, he muttered to himself. Document, catalog, analyze. He was a scholar. That was the only way he knew how to survive, to rationalize the irrational. Jonathan returned to the study and flipped open his leather-bound journal, attempting to transcribe as much of the book's content as possible. Perhaps, he thought, if he could understand it, he could control it. But the more he read, the more the words seemed to shift, realign, contradict themselves. Sentences would begin in one language and end in another. Phrases he had previously deciphered would morph into entirely different passages upon rereading. He scribbled furiously, ignoring the growing ache behind his eyes. By noon, the light outside had turned from gray to a sickly, pale yellow, a color that made the fog look like spoiled milk hovering over the streets. Jonathan needed air. He threw on his jacket and stepped out, the door creaking behind him as he shut it. The streets of Greywater Cove were eerily quiet. Most of the residents were older folks, fishermen, shopkeepers, descendants of settlers who had lived here for generations. Today, however, there were barely any cars parked along the curb. The few people who passed him on the sidewalk averted their gaze quickly, as if sensing something off about him. He couldn't blame them. He felt off. Turning the corner onto Dock Street, Jonathan caught sight of the shoreline, a narrow stretch of dark sand beneath craggy bluffs where gulls circled lazily overhead. The sea was calm but somehow unnatural, its surface too smooth, as though coated with a thin membrane. "You're imagining things," he told himself. As he passed by the old bait shop, the bell above the door jingled behind him. An elderly man, his weathered face carved by decades of salt air, stood behind the counter restocking shelves. Jonathan had seen him around before but had never spoken to him. The man glanced up, squinting through milky blue eyes. "You shouldn't be walking near the cliffs today," the old man said without greeting. His voice was dry, like crumpled paper. Jonathan paused. "Why's that?" The old man tapped his fingers against the counter, eyes narrowing. "The fog's thicker today. Things move inside it." Jonathan offered a polite but strained smile. "What sort of things?" The man's gaze didn't waver. "Things that don't belong here." Jonathan felt a chill run through him. The air inside the shop seemed heavier now. "Have you ever heard of Lyman Vetetum?" Jonathan asked carefully. The old man stiffened. "You found the book, didn't you?" he said after a long pause, his voice lowered barely above a whisper. Jonathan's heart skipped. "What do you know about it?" The old man leaned in slightly, lowering his voice even further. "Some knowledge was never meant to be dug up. The Caldwell estate, where you got that thing, it should have been burned, not sold." Jonathan swallowed hard. "You know about Caraway too, don't you?" The man nodded grimly. "Ersh Caraway went looking where no man should. The threshold. It's not a place, son. It's a hunger, a wound in the world." Jonathan's mouth went dry. Even hearing someone else acknowledge it made everything feel more real, dangerously real. "Whatever you think you're doing," the old man continued, "you need to stop before it starts pulling you in too deep." For a brief moment, Jonathan felt something close to panic rise in his chest, but another voice inside him, colder, more curious, whispered, "You're already too deep." As he made his way back home, Jonathan couldn't shake the conversation from his mind. The fog had thickened further, swallowing whole blocks of the town. Streetlights glowed like dying embers suspended in the mist. Back inside the cottage, the air felt heavier. The house creaked as though reacting to his presence. Jonathan glanced at the mirror again, the one in his bedroom across from the foot of the bed. This time, there was no mistake. His reflection was not his own. The version of himself staring back bore a wide, unnatural grin, the lips stretched just a hair too wide, the teeth too perfect, the eyes unblinking. And worst of all, the reflection didn't mimic his movements anymore. Jonathan's stomach lurched. He stepped back. The reflection continued to grin, then it whispered, lips barely moving. "Come closer." Jonathan staggered back from the mirror, heart pounding so violently that it seemed to rattle his ribs. His reflection continued smiling, wide, knowing, as if amused by his terror. The air in the room thickened, vibrating subtly like an unseen current twisting reality at the edges of his vision. He dared not turn away. The moment stretched unbearably, his own breath rasping against the growing silence. And then, in the space between seconds, the reflection's grin vanished. The image snapped back into perfect synchronization with his movements, as though nothing had ever been wrong. Jonathan stumbled out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind him, his breath ragged and sharp. He pressed his back to the wall, hands shaking uncontrollably. "You're losing it," he whispered. "You're sleep-deprived, hallucinating. That's all this is." But the lingering weight in his chest told him otherwise. The reflection had spoken. He had heard it, clear as day. "Come closer." Hours passed in a haze. Jonathan sat hunched in his study, poring through the pages of the Nether Codex by lamplight, desperately seeking any rational explanation, any clue, any thread to follow that might grant him back control over his own mind. The text was no less maddening. Each time he revisited earlier passages, they read differently. Words reordered themselves, symbols expanded, multiplied. The diagrams of coastal caves grew more elaborate, taking on nearly organic qualities. curling tendrils, pulsing nodes, lines that bent into impossible geometries. The Codex was alive. It wasn't simply a book, it was a parasite, one that had embedded itself into his perception, feeding off his attention, distorting reality with each passing day. And yet, Jonathan couldn't look away. As night fell again over Greywater Cove, the house groaned under the weight of another cold front rolling in from the sea. The wind whispered through the trees, but within the house, a more insidious stillness reigned. Jonathan turned off the lamp and wandered aimlessly from room to room, his mind teetering on the edge of exhaustion and obsession. The house felt wrong, subtly altered, as if the walls had shifted inward by a fraction of an inch while he wasn't looking. The corners of rooms no longer aligned quite as they should. The shadows seemed heavier. When he entered the living room, he froze. The mirror, he had forgotten about the smaller mirror mounted above the fireplace. A decorative antique he rarely paid any attention to. But now, even from across the room, he saw movement within it. Not a reflection, a shape. A silhouette, standing just behind him in the reflection, tall and thin, its elongated limbs tapering into sharp angles. The figure leaned forward slightly, its head tilting at an unnatural angle as though observing him with silent curiosity. Jonathan spun around. The room was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. But his own reflection remained pale and gaunt, his eyes sunken, his pupils dilated wide in the low light. The scratching returned. It began as a faint rustle beneath the floorboards, like dry leaves twisting in the wind, then it escalated into something more deliberate. Rhythmic scraping from beneath the wooden planks. Jonathan clenched his teeth, his fists balling instinctively. "Not again," he whispered. The scratching grew louder, closer. He stepped carefully across the creaking floor, toward the center of the room, where the sound was most intense. The floor vent, the same one from the previous night, rattled softly under each scrape. And then came the voice. "You are opening it." The whisper came from beneath the vent, raspy, layered, like several voices speaking out of sync. The words reverberated up through the duct curling around Jonathan's ears. He staggered back again, bile rising in his throat. "No," he choked. "I'm not." "You are opening it," the voices repeated in eerie unison. "We are waiting." Jonathan fled upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind him, his breath ragged. His pulse pounded in his ears. The house no longer felt like his own. It was as though something had taken root within its walls, as if the house itself was breathing. He locked the door and collapsed into the chair by the window, trying to steady himself, gripping his arms tightly as if to keep his body from coming apart. The mark on his palm pulsed again, stronger this time. When he looked down, he saw that the symbol had grown. The once small sigil beneath his skin had now spread outward in delicate vein-like filaments, wrapping around his wrist like creeping vine. The glow was faint but unmistakable, a soft bioluminescence that seemed to pulse in sync with his racing heart. Jonathan let out a broken laugh, part fear, part hysteria. "What the hell is happening to me?" he whispered. The mirror across the room darkened suddenly, drawing his eyes toward it once again. The glass seemed to ripple, like the surface of a disturbed pond. This time, however, it didn't simply reflect his image. It opened. Behind his reflection, the same cavernous scene from his dreams appeared. Dark, glistening stone, wet and pulsing, as though the cave itself were alive. And in the center, that terrible curtain of organic flesh. The threshold throbbed gently like a giant lung. It was real. Somehow, impossibly, the book had brought it here, into his mind, into his home. The whispers returned, louder this time, echoing inside his skull. "Cross the threshold." Jonathan staggered to his feet, eyes wide with dread as the reflection in the mirror extended its hand toward him. Beckoning, the air grew denser, the room narrowing, reality bending inward, and then, With an audible crack, a thin fracture appeared along the mirror's surface, spiderwebbing outward as though something on the other side was pressing through. The final words before the glass fully splintered were, "No longer whispers. We are here." The mirror was gone, at least. That's what Jonathan told himself, as morning light pushed through the thin curtains, illuminating the empty spot where the cracked mirror had once stood. Sometime during the night, or perhaps during his haze of half-waking nightmares, he had ripped the remains from the wall and thrown the shattered frame into the trash outside. But its absence didn't make him feel safer. The air inside the cottage remained heavy, thick with that pulsing presence, the same strange rhythm that had taken residence within his chest. His palms still glowed faintly beneath the skin, the creeping veins of the sigil crawling further up his forearm with every passing day. Jonathan tried not to look at it anymore. Instead, he poured coffee with hands that trembled more than he cared to admit, the bitter scent barely cutting through the damp salt that hung in the air. Even the coffee tasted hollow, as if the world itself had grown thin. He needed answers. By late morning, Jonathan made his way back toward the harbor. The streets of Greywater Cove were unusually empty, but that no longer surprised him. Ever since his arrival, the locals had kept their distance, a distance that now seemed to widen with every passing day. Their silence wasn't simple small-town coldness, it was fear. They knew. They had always known. The fog hung heavy over the dockyard like a living thing, curling around lobster traps and abandoned boats, muffling the cries of seagulls into distant echoes, unnervingly smooth. Jonathan scanned the empty docks until he spotted the old man again, the one from the bait shop. Today, he was seated on an overturned crate near the edge of the wharf, repairing a tangled fishing net with gnarled, weathered hands. The man looked up before Jonathan even spoke, as if expecting him. "You're back," he rasped. Jonathan nodded, approaching carefully. "I need to talk to you." The old fisherman narrowed his eyes but said nothing. "I know about Caraway," Jonathan continued, "and the threshold. I need to know the truth." For a long moment, the old man simply stared at him, chewing the inside of his cheek. Then, without a word, he patted the crate beside him. Jonathan sat. "You're not the first one," the fisherman said after a while. His voice was thin, yet carried a tired gravity that made Jonathan's skin crawl. "Others came before you. Not many, but enough." "Who?" "Men like you, curious, scholars mostly. A few years back, maybe longer. They always start with books, always start with questions." He spat into the water. "But books like that one, they don't give answers, only invitations." Jonathan swallowed hard. The old man's words felt heavier than the damp air around them. "You knew Caraway?" The old man shook his head. "No one really knew Caraway. He was obsessed. Obsession like that, it eats you from the inside long before anything else gets a chance." He paused, squinting into the fog. "The caves?" Jonathan pressed. "They're real, aren't they?" The old man's voice dropped even lower, forcing Jonathan to lean in closer. "The caves breathe, boy. That's where the veil is thin. Some say it's a wound in the world. Others say it's always been there, waiting for fools to find it. Caraway found it, and now you found his trail." Jonathan's mouth was dry. "What's beyond the threshold?" The old fisherman's expression tightened. His next words came slow, deliberate. "A place that doesn't belong to men. Geometry that twists wrong. Creatures that were never meant to be seen. Time doesn't work right there. Neither does your mind." He paused, his milky eyes locking onto Jonathan's. "And once you've seen it, part of it sees you too." Jonathan's stomach twisted, his mind flashing back to the figure in the mirror, the whispering voices, the symbol spreading beneath his skin. "I think it's already inside me," Jonathan whispered. The old man didn't deny it. "Then you're further along than most." The fog thickened as they sat in silence for several minutes. Girls wheeled above them, but their cries sounded muted, distant, as if the fog swallowed sound as greedily as it swallowed light. "Can it be stopped?" Jonathan finally asked. The old fisherman let out a hollow chuckle. "Stopped?" He shook his head. "You don't stop a tide, you drown. Or you keep your head above water as long as you can." His words settled like stones in Jonathan's gut. "Then why warn me? Because once you pass the threshold," the old man said, voice like cracked driftwood, "there ain't no coming back. And most who cross it don't even realize they've done it until it's too late." The conversation lingered with Jonathan long after he returned home. His mind churned with the weight of the old man's words, the fog pressing against his windows like greedy hands. The codex lay on his desk, closed but pulsing as if sensing his growing surrender. That night, the dreams returned. He stood once more inside the cavern, its walls glistening with a thin, organic sheen that breathed like wet lungs. The air was thick with vibrating whispers in languages he could not name, their words slicing through his mind like knives made of thought. The threshold loomed before him, its curtain of quivering flesh undulating rhythmically, inviting him forward. Behind it, faint shapes moved, towering silhouettes, their limbs impossibly elongated, their skin glistening like shattered mirrors under moonlight. He took one step closer, and the whispers crescendoed into one unified command: "Come closer." Jonathan's hands reached out on their own, trembling but drawn forward, and then he woke. But this time, something was different. He wasn't alone. As his eyes fluttered open, still adjusting to the thin glow of dawn, Jonathan heard the unmistakable sound of something breathing. Not his own breath, but deeper, heavier, coming from somewhere inside the house. The air carried a faint vibration, as though the walls themselves hummed. From the corner of his vision, near the crack beneath the bedroom door, a thin wisp of dark fog began to seep in, curling like fingers reaching under the frame. The breathing grew louder. Jonathan lay frozen in his bed, his chest tight, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The sound was not mechanical. It wasn't the groan of the house or the wind sneaking through old cracks. No, this was wet, organic, rhythmic, a living thing. The tendrils of dark mist continued to slip beneath the bedroom door, coiling across the floorboards like smoke with weight. They moved with intent, as though searching for him. Jonathan sat up slowly, his breath hitching. The faint glow from his arm, from the mark that had now expanded to cover most of his forearm, cast a ghostly light across the room, the veins of the sigil pulsing softly like bioluminescent vines beneath his skin. He had to move. As quietly as possible, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, planting his bare feet on the cold wooden floor. The mist curled around his ankles like curious fingers, sending a chill through his bones. He crept toward the window. Outside, the world had dissolved into the thickest fog yet. The trees that bordered his property were swallowed whole. The familiar fence line was gone. Even the faint golden glow of the harbor's distant lamps had vanished. There was only the mist. And the breathing. The house itself seemed to flex with each exhale. Jonathan forced himself to move toward the bedroom door. He wrapped his hand around the old brass knob, its metal slick with condensation, and slowly turned it. The door creaked open, inch by agonizing inch. The hallway beyond was unnaturally dark. As his eyes adjusted, he realized that the walls had begun to sweat. Thin rivulets of moisture ran down the faded wallpaper, pooling along the floorboards. The air smelled damp, metallic, almost like blood diluted in seawater. The breathing was everywhere now. It wasn't behind him or below him. It was inside the house. Jonathan descended the stairs, each step creaking beneath his weight. The mist coiled around him, thicker now, nearly waist-high as it crept through the rooms. In the living room, the pulsing had grown stronger, a deep thrumming in the walls, as if something enormous lurked just beyond the thin barrier of reality, pressing closer. Then he saw it. The codex. It still lay where he had left it on the desk, but now its cover pulsed in time with the breathing, the symbol upon it glowing faintly, flexing like a beating heart. The The very leather of the binding writhed gently under the surface, as though veins and tissue lay beneath its outer layer. Jonathan's stomach twisted. "You're feeding it," a voice whispered from the shadows. Jonathan spun around. His breath caught in his throat. At the far end of the room, barely visible through the swirling mist, stood a figure. Tall, gaunt, draped in something resembling tattered oilskin, its face was lost beneath a heavy hood, but two faint pinprick lights shimmered where eyes should be. Who are you?" Jonathan choked. The figure tilted its head, almost curiously. "You've opened the door," it whispered. Its voice was layered, vibrating slightly, as though multiple speakers were talking just out of sync. "We've been waiting for another." Jonathan backed up toward the desk, his hand brushing against the codex involuntarily. "I didn't open anything," he insisted, though the words rang hollow. "Oh, but you have." The figure's voice grew softer, almost tender. "Every page you read, every mark upon your skin, every night you gazed into the mirror, it was all part of the invitation." Jonathan's legs weakened. His mind reeled back to the old fisherman's warning. "You can't stop a tide." "What is this place?" Jonathan whispered. The figure's answer came like a breath across his mind. "The threshold." The word wasn't spoken as much as it was projected, echoing inside his skull like a bell struck too deeply. The very room seemed to pulse with it. Jonathan gripped his head as nausea swept through him. The figure stepped forward, its elongated limbs moving with a jerking, unnatural grace. The mist parted around it as though repelled by its presence. Jonathan's knees buckled and he stumbled backward into the desk, knocking over a lamp. The room was plunged into shadow, and then he heard them. The whispers. They filled the house now, crawling from the walls, the floor, the very air itself. Dozens, hundreds of overlapping voices, speaking languages both familiar and utterly alien. "Come closer." "Cross." "Join." Jonathan covered his ears, but the voices were inside him, vibrating through his bones. The house flexed again. This time, the very walls seemed to breathe inward, as if the structure itself was inhaling. Cracks splintered along the ceiling, thin black veins snaking outward like fractures in a great sheet of ice. The floor beneath Jonathan trembled. "No!" Jonathan screamed. "I won't!" "You already have," the figure whispered. Suddenly, the codex flared beneath his palm, burning hot against his skin. The sigil on his arm pulsed in sync, glowing brighter and brighter until Jonathan's vision blurred. Heat and pain radiated through his arm and up into his chest. His breath hitched, and then, with a sound like wet tearing, the air itself split open directly above the codex. A thin vertical wound in space, black, pulsing, quivering like living tissue, tore itself into existence, hovering in midair. From within, faint shadows writhed, pressing against the slick membrane, desperate to push through. It was no longer a metaphor. The threshold had arrived. Jonathan stared, paralyzed, as one of the shadows began to take shape. A tall, spindly appendage sliding through the wound with a wet, slithering sound, its surface glistening like oiled glass. The figure across the room whispered one last time, "Welcome home." The wound in reality had vanished by morning. Jonathan awoke sprawled across the cold hardwood floor of his study, drenched in sweat, gasping as though he'd surfaced from drowning. His heart hammered inside his chest, the echo of voices still faintly ringing in his skull. The pulsing vertical tear above the Nether Codex was gone, leaving only the closed book on the desk, innocuous, silent. But he knew better. The house groaned softly around him, as if mocking his fragile grasp on normalcy. The mist outside still clung thick against the windows, but the breathing, that terrible omnipresent breathing, had faded back into the background, whom he now carried within him like a parasite. Jonathan rose to his feet unsteadily. The sigil had grown worse. The dark, bioluminescent filaments now spiraled up his arm and shoulder, reaching toward his neck like invasive roots seeking vital organs. The skin beneath was taut, tender to the touch, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. Or was it pulsing in rhythm with something else entirely? He couldn't tell anymore. The voice that guided him now was no longer external. It lived inside his thoughts. Not shouting, not demanding, but constantly pulling, a persistent undercurrent that steered him toward the inevitable. You've seen its mouth. Now you must enter it. He hadn't touched the Nether Codex since the previous night, yet its presence remained fixed in his mind like a brand. Every page he had read now played back in fragments behind his eyelids, rearranging themselves into clearer patterns. The cave, the threshold, limen vetitum. It was no longer theoretical, no longer an artifact of folklore, no longer some abstract symbol of forbidden knowledge. It was real, and it was calling. Jonathan knew where he had to go. By midday, he had packed. His duffel bag contained only essentials: flashlight, rope, gloves, camera equipment, a notebook, flares, and the codex itself. Wrapped tightly in oilcloth once again, like the cursed relic it had always been. As he drove out of Greywater Cove, the town receded into the fog as though erasing itself behind him. The narrow coastal highway curved along jagged cliffs, where waves slammed against black stone far below. The radio offered only static, and even the cell reception had grown weaker as he ventured deeper into the isolated stretches of Maine's forgotten shoreline. This wasn't a well-traveled tourist coast. This was older, meaner. After nearly 2 hours, the road ended. The asphalt dissolved into gravel, and eventually into nothing more than a muddy footpath swallowed by thick clusters of pine. The trees here leaned inward unnaturally, as though whispering to one another, forming narrow, organic corridors through which Jonathan now had to hike on foot. The old fisherman's directions guided him. "Low tide," the man had said. "Only then will the mouth reveal itself." Jonathan glanced at his watch. The tide was falling rapidly, and he could already hear the hungry rasp of waves receding against the jagged coastline ahead. The trail terminated at a precarious bluff overlooking the sea. Below, slick rocks jutted like broken teeth from shallow pools where water swirled in slow, unnatural. And there, carved into the cliffside and partially exposed by the receding tide, was the entrance, the mouth, a massive arched cavity ringed with hanging moss and glistening with damp, as though exhaling vapor into the frigid air. The cave yawned before him like a throat waiting to swallow. Jonathan's stomach turned. The voices pressed gently at the back of his mind, closer. Descending the slick path was treacherous. Wet stones shifted beneath his boots, and sharp barnacles bit at his palms when he slipped and caught himself against the rocks. As he neared the mouth of the cave, the air changed. It was warmer here, unnaturally so, as though the breath of something deep inside the earth was rising to meet him. The humid air reeked of salt, decay, and something else, something metallic and sweet, like old blood. The flashlight in his hand flickered briefly as he entered the cave proper. Its beam illuminated smooth, undulating walls, not rough stone as he expected, but slick, almost organic surfaces that seemed to ripple faintly beneath the light. The entire tunnel vibrated with a low hum, like the distant rumble of a giant slumbering heart. Jonathan pressed forward. The passage narrowed and twisted like the coils of some vast intestinal tract, occasionally splitting into small chambers where stagnant pools reflected shifting patterns on the ceiling. Strange symbols, eerily reminiscent of the glyphs within the Nether Codex, were etched into the walls in spiraling clusters, their meanings lost to any known language. In one alcove, he passed a small stone altar, old, crumbling, but still stained dark with what might have been dried blood. Around it lay the remnants of old bones, shattered and gnawed, scattered like broken offerings. He didn't stop to examine them. The deeper he ventured, the more time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into something looser, detached from reality. His breathing slowed unnaturally, matching the rhythmic hum that now resonated not just in the air, but in his very bones. He was becoming part of it. Eventually, the narrow passage widened abruptly into an enormous chamber. Jonathan's breath caught. He had arrived. The threshold. It stood at the far end of the chamber, dominating the space entirely, a wall of pulsating membranous flesh, almost translucent, throbbed with a steady, living rhythm. Veins and arteries webbed across its surface, glowing faintly with that same sickly bioluminescent light that now lived beneath his skin. Shapes moved behind it, towering, twisting silhouettes that defied physics, their elongated forms shifting like liquid geometry. As they pressed against the membrane, the surface rippled and recoiled as if it were alive, as if it felt him standing there. The voices crescendoed again inside his skull. Cross, join, complete the passage. Jonathan staggered forward involuntarily, drawn closer with each step. His limbs trembled but obeyed. The threshold pulsed in response, a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate through the chamber itself. And then, the surface of the membrane began to thin. A dark impression pressed outward from within, taking shape. A face, elongated, alien, mirror-like skin that shimmered like black oil, no eyes, no mouth, yet Jonathan could feel it staring into him, through him. A greeting. Or a warning. Jonathan stood frozen before the pulsing wall of flesh, unable to tear his gaze away from the face that pressed against the membrane. It had no features as humans understood them, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, but it radiated a consciousness so ancient and vast that his own thought shrank before it, like a candle flame caught in the pull of a black hole. The chamber vibrated with its silent presence. "You've come far." The words didn't enter his ears. They resonated directly into the folds of his mind. Not a voice, but an intrusion. Jonathan's legs buckled. He fell to his knees, panting, his forehead slick with sweat. The sigil under his skin pulsed in rapid response, flaring brightly as if in recognition of what stood before him. His veins glowed like living circuitry, feeding energy into the threshold itself. "What are you?" Jonathan rasped, though he already knew the question was meaningless. The reply was neither gentle nor cruel. It was simply inevitable. "I am the other side of what you are." The pulsating curtain quivered. Behind it, the impossible shapes writhed and shifted, constantly breaking and reforming geometries not meant for human perception. Twisting limbs coiled around one another in fluid spirals that bent space like warped reflections in shattered glass. Jonathan's stomach churned. He felt himself unraveling, not physically, but conceptually. His sense of self, his identity, began to thin like vapor on glass. He clutched his head, forcing himself to focus on his breath, on the physicality of his shaking body, trying to anchor himself to the fragile human tether that remained. The threshold pulsed again. "Why me?" he whispered. The response rippled through his consciousness like cold electricity. "Because you listened. You opened. You belong." Jonathan's throat tightened. "I didn't ask for this." "You read. You saw. You came." The chamber darkened. The membrane thickened, the flesh quivering as something larger, far larger, stirred behind it. The distant silhouettes became clearer, towering, sinuous forms with shifting limbs that coiled and unfurled like liquid tendrils, their mirrored skins catching stray reflections of an unnatural light that came from no source. One of the shapes glided closer, pressing its full form against the membrane, stretching it outward like the surface of a balloon. 1,000 glittering fractures shimmered across its body like windows into alternate spaces. Its limbs were not true arms or legs, but extensions of itself, fluid instruments of intention. And then, a thin fissure opened in the center of the threshold. Jonathan's breath hitched as a sliver of cold air blew into the chamber. The smell of rot and ozone invaded his nostrils. From the fissure, a long, tendrilled appendage slowly emerged, slick, glistening, segmented, like the jointed leg of some vast, subterranean insect. It stopped mere feet from him, waiting, inviting. The whispers inside his skull crescendoed again. "Join! Cross! You are almost complete!" Jonathan's body shook violently. His instincts screamed at him to run, to flee back into the twisting tunnels and out into the safety of ignorance. But his body remained rooted in place, bound by something deeper than fear. He was no longer entirely himself. The Codex had hollowed a place within him, and that void was now being filled. "Let go," the voices whispered. "Let go of what you were." Jonathan's hand twitched forward involuntarily. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to resist, but the warmth beneath his skin radiated outward, engulfing him in a wave of numb euphoria. The sigil across his arm blazed with blinding light. "No!" he gasped through gritted teeth. But another voice answered, his own voice but distant, layered beneath the chorus of alien whispers. "Yes." The membrane pulsed one final time, and a blinding flash of sickly green and violet light filled the chamber. For a moment, Jonathan's senses collapsed into a state of weightlessness, as though his physical form had been disassembled into scattered fragments of awareness, drifting in some void outside time. He saw things he could not describe, glimpses of infinite structures spiraling into impossible fractal dimensions, entities moving through layers of reality like sharks swimming through overlapping oceans, their forms composed of angles and echoes rather than flesh. And then he slammed back into his body, gasping as though resurfacing from beneath crushing waves. The tendril still hovered before him, but now something had changed. His vision swam, and as it cleared, he saw his own reflection rippling along the tendril's glossy surface. Except it wasn't truly his reflection. The face staring back held his features, but subtly wrong. Too symmetrical, too smooth. The eyes glowed faintly, hollow but aware. It was him, and it was waiting. The tendril twitched. Without warning, it darted forward and gently touched Jonathan's chest, right above his racing heart. The contact was electric, not painful, but invasive. Instantly, a burning warmth spread through his ribcage as if invisible roots were sprouting beneath his skin, binding him to something unfathomably large. His mind reeled as new patterns burned themselves into his consciousness. Glyphs, diagrams, languages, rituals. The threshold was no longer showing him visions. It was inserting knowledge directly into his being. A terrible, irreversible understanding. This wasn't the end of the ritual. This was only its beginning. Suddenly, behind the membrane, one of the towering entities shifted violently. Its elongated body twisted sharply toward Jonathan, as if finally recognizing him fully. Not merely as an observer, but as a participant. The chamber trembled. The voices inside his head fell silent, and from behind the threshold, a new voice, deeper, more ancient than anything before, spoke a single word that was not heard by ears, but felt in the marrow of his bones. Awakening. Jonathan didn't know how long he'd been kneeling inside the chamber. Time no longer behaved the way it once had. Seconds stretched and folded upon themselves, like the thin skin of an old drum pulled taut, vibrating under an invisible rhythm. The membrane of the threshold still pulsed before him, throbbing with a steady cadence that echoed deep inside his chest. His heart had long since synchronized with its rhythm, no longer his own. The sigil beneath his skin now covered his entire arm and shoulder like a second, glowing circulatory system, humming with unnatural life. The entity behind the veil loomed closer. The towering figure moved like liquid geometry, angles folding into curves that shouldn't exist, limbs stretching across dimensions Jonathan couldn't fully perceive. And yet, despite its formless nature, Jonathan felt its attention tighten upon him, like the gaze of a colossal predator examining its prey before the kill. But there was no malice, only inevitability. "Why me?" Jonathan asked again, though the question now felt small, almost childish. The answer vibrated directly through the chamber walls, resonating inside his bones. "Because you were open. I didn't ask for this," he whispered. "You read, you crossed, you invited." The words were always the same, simple, damning. He had read the Nether Codex. He had followed the maps. He had walked willingly into the maw, and the maw had opened its throat to receive him. The walls of the chamber shifted. Organic ridges bulged and contracted as the cave itself seemed to inhale deeply, as though something behind the threshold was breathing through the tunnel system. A low-frequency rumble rolled through the floor, vibrating Jonathan's teeth in their sockets. Suddenly, the thin fissure in the center of the membrane widened again. From within, another tendril emerged, slick and glistening, segmented like the limb of some massive arthropod. But unlike the earlier contact, this one carried something different. It dripped. Thick, dark fluid seeped from its surface, hitting the ground in slow, deliberate droplets that hissed faintly as they landed, as though even the stone recoiled from their touch. Blood. Or something far worse. The whispers returned, softer now, almost coaxing. Drink. Accept. Bind. Jonathan's stomach twisted violently. His body rebelled at the thought, yet his mind, or rather the thing growing inside his mind, pulsed with a strange hunger. He tried to push backward, but his knees remained locked to the trembling stone floor. The tendril lowered toward him, offering its bleeding tip like some obscene sacrament. The voices inside him grew more insistent. Only by blood may the veil part. Only through the offering will you see. Jonathan clenched his jaw until it ached. I won't, he hissed. But the tendril pulsed in response, and with a sudden jerk, a single droplet detached from its tip, falling directly onto his bare forearm. Where it touched, the mark exploded with light. Pain lanced through his nerves like molten iron, burning a web of new lines across his chest and neck. He screamed, his voice echoing through the chamber like a dying animal. But beneath the agony, something else bloomed. Understanding. Patterns flooded his consciousness, symbols rearranging into structures he could finally comprehend, knowledge unspooling like tightly wound strings unraveling across dimensions. He was seeing more, seeing beyond. The threshold pulsed rapidly now, as if reacting to his partial initiation. From somewhere deep behind the veil, a new figure moved, larger than the others. Its size was impossible to comprehend. The chamber seemed to bend outward as its bulk drew closer, the walls warping like liquid around its form. Its face, if one could call it that, pressed against the membrane. A shifting mass of spiraling eyes, mouths, and geometric spirals spun within one another like galaxies folding in on themselves. Voices tumbled from its many mouths in a harmony of contradictions, chanting in dozens of languages simultaneously. Jonathan's mind buckled. The first one watches you now. It sees your roots. It remembers your bloodline. The word struck a strange chord inside him, deeper than mere fear. His bloodline. The notion cut through the fog of his unraveling mind like a shard of ice. For a brief, lucid moment, he recalled the old journal entries he had once skimmed during his research. The rumors about Urge Caraway, the missing explorer, the original author of the Nether Codex. A series of secret cults and blood oaths whispered through remote fishing communities along the main coast. Stories that were dismissed as folklore. But what if it wasn't myth? What do you mean, my bloodline? Jonathan rasped aloud. The entity behind the veil responded not with words but with imagery. Flashes inside his skull like searing photographs burned into his retinas. He saw Caraway, younger, gaunt, fevered with obsession, standing in this very chamber, extending his hands toward the same fleshy membrane, eyes wide with ecstatic terror, and behind him, a woman. Her face bore features hauntingly familiar. Jonathan's stomach lurched. Family, the voice whispered. The door was first opened by your blood. The air thickened, the chamber's vibration intensifying, as though the very rock strained to contain the truth. The knowledge flooded him like poison, and yet some part of him accepted its inevitability. He was never simply a man who found the book. He was always meant to find it. The Codex didn't find readers. It found heirs. The tendril lifted again, this time curling gently beneath his chin, forcing him to look directly into the swirling chaos of the threshold's living eye. The voices converged into one final, inescapable whisper. You were always part of us. Jonathan's breathing became erratic as the tendril held his chin steady, forcing him to stare deeper into the swirling core of the entity pressing against the threshold. The eye, if it could even be called that, rotated endlessly, spiraling inward upon itself, dragging his consciousness toward an abyss that was no longer simply external. He felt himself slipping again, not his body but his mind unraveling into strands, like a loose thread being pulled from the fabric of his identity. "I won't," Jonathan whispered, his voice hoarse. "I won't become you." The voices inside him answered in perfect unison. "You already are." The images returned, sharp, invasive, undeniable. Visions of Caraway's rituals, of his ancestors kneeling before the threshold long before Jonathan was born. They had offered blood. They had bound themselves to this thing, to them, through forbidden rites, their desperate hunger for knowledge blinding them to the cost. He was the latest branch of a poison tree. The Codex had not been lost. It had waited for him. Jonathan's legs trembled violently beneath him. His head swam under the weight of memories that weren't fully his, but now lived inside him, grafted onto his psyche like parasitic roots. "You are the vessel," the deep voice intoned again. "No." The tendril pressed tighter beneath his jaw, the fluid dripping from its segments, sizzling on the stone below, filling the chamber with a metallic, pungent stench. His heartbeat pounded louder, but not entirely his own rhythm anymore. The Codex's mark pulsed in perfect sync with the threshold's breathing. Jonathan knew what was happening. It was preparing him. The initiation was reaching its final stage. The chamber trembled as the membrane began to thin in the center. A visible rupture slowly tore itself open, like flesh being peeled apart along a surgical incision. The air grew impossibly thick, vibrating with energy that carried the weight of entire worlds folding into this space. Through the growing slit, Jonathan caught glimpses of the impossible, an endless black plain stretching into infinity, dotted with towering, angular structures that rotated like living architecture. Beings drifted across the skyline, enormous, glimmering entities composed of constantly shifting facets, their forms defying every natural law he had ever understood. They weren't gods, they weren't demons, they simply were primordial, indifferent, patient. The voices flooded him once more. "Step through, become whole, join the lineage of Caraway, leave your shell behind." Jonathan's arms lifted against his will, extending toward the widening rupture like a marionette controlled by unseen strings. His fingertips brushed to the slick surface of the opening. The membrane was warm, alive. It pulsed against his touch like breathing skin, yielding slightly, inviting him inward. Suddenly, amid the overpowering storm of whispers, a different voice cut through. "Jonathan." He froze. It was not one of them. The voice was faint, human, feminine, familiar. "Jonathan." He turned his head slightly. For a brief moment, standing on the far edge of the chamber's entrance, where the darkness met the faint beam of his discarded flashlight, stood the figure of a woman, pale, delicate, eyes wide, filled with sorrow. His mother. Or the image of her. The vision of his mother did not move toward him, but held her hand out, palm open, pleading. "Fight it," she whispered. "You don't have to be part of them." Jonathan's chest heaved. His knees quivered as conflicting forces surged inside him. "No," the voices of the threshold pushed back. "She is memory. We are truth." The tendril gripped him tighter. "You belong to us." Jonathan's mind fractured at the edges, splitting between the two voices warring within him. The cold inevitability of the threshold calling him home, and the flickering ember of his own fading humanity. The light from the vision of his mother began to dim. "Please," she begged, voice barely audible now, as though sinking beneath deep water. His body shook violently. The glowing lines beneath his skin throbbed with a burning pulse, now crawling past his neck and toward his face. Idly cross. 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 The rupture before him widened into a fully open gash, a doorway into the other side. A gale of swirling mist poured forth, carrying an impossible weight of soundless screams and disjointed geometries, crashing against one another in perfect disorder. The threshold had fully opened. Jonathan let out one final scream as his fingers slipped forward, about to cross through. And just as his fingertips pierced the veil, a single eye from within the rift snapped open directly before him, enormous, unblinking, consuming every fragment of his sight. Its gaze hit him like a tidal wave of raw, ancient intellect. Not welcoming, not angry, just hungry. There was no time, no sound, no place as Jonathan existed, but not as he once did. His body was gone, or perhaps disassembled, scattered into vibrations, fragments of thought floating inside an immense, incomprehensible space where existence bent like heat waves over desert sand. He was within the rift, beyond the threshold. The laws of reality had twisted, unfurled into impossible loops. Color no longer obeyed the spectrum. Time had lost its sequence. His perception hovered, fragmented, spinning in a spiral of images that collided and dissolved as quickly as they formed. He could no longer feel his skin. No breath, no weight, only consciousness, naked and vulnerable, drifting inside the belly of something ancient. Around him, towering shapes coiled through this realm. The beings he had glimpsed through the tear in his world, their bodies glistened, composed of reflective surfaces that caught the echoes of light and thought like floating shards of broken mirrors. They didn't swim or fly. They existed, slipping effortlessly across dimensions layered like paper, folding space as they moved. And they saw him. "You have crossed." The voice was no longer separate from him. It was him. A collective mind enfolded his own, speaking through his thoughts, washing him with its vast, cold awareness. "You are of us now." Jonathan struggled to resist, but there was no body to fight with, no mouth to scream. He was thought within a sea of thought. Each time he tried to gather himself, to reform the fragile threads of his identity, the wave returned, pulling at him, breaking him back into scattered shards. "You belonged before you were born. You were bred for this. The Codex was your inheritance." New images flooded him, clearer than before. Visions of Caraway standing before the threshold, performing the first contact ritual. Caraway's obsession had not been purely academic. It had been devotion, an offering, a pact struck not for knowledge, but for bloodline. Jonathan saw the generations that followed, quiet descendants carrying the dormant mark within their DNA, unaware of the weight their blood carried. The Codex had merely waited for the next chosen vessel strong enough to endure the summoning. Him. He was never an accident. He was always the design. "I refuse," Jonathan's mind whispered, trying to resist the pull. But the entity's reply was absolute. "You are already woven into us." With that, the tendrils returned, massive extensions of the entities themselves, wrapping around his fractured essence like roots binding a stone. They began to compress, tightening around the scattered pieces of his consciousness, forcing them together, not to restore him, but to reform him, to reshape him. Jonathan screamed into the void, but sound had no meaning here. The pressure intensified, and for one horrifying moment, he felt himself folding inward, collapsing into something other. His human identity teetered on the brink of erasure, but then something shifted. A flicker, a fracture. In the distance, or what passed for distance in this fluid dimension, Jonathan sensed a ripple, like a faint tremor traveling through the layered walls of this realm. A crack of dissonance. The memory of the vision returned. The image of his mother reaching for him. The echo of her voice whispering, "Fight it." The words resurfaced like a dying ember rekindled. It wasn't strength. It wasn't power. It was anchor. Jonathan clung to the memory. His mind latched onto every piece of what made him him. The feel of rain on his skin, the warmth of coffee between his hands, the pages of old journals beneath his fingertips, the smell of salt air off the Maine coast. identity, history, choice. The tendrils tightened again, but this time they met resistance. Jonathan focused his remaining consciousness like a blade, driving it against the invasive compression. The roots buckled. For the first time, the great consciousness hesitated. "You resist," it vibrated, curious but not angry. "You should not resist. You belong." No. The force of his rejection sent ripples through the chamber of entities. Their shifting forms twisted and recoiled, folding backward into layered spirals of impossible angles. Jonathan's thoughts condensed, growing heavier, pulling him downward, as though gravity had returned back, toward his body, toward his world. He fell, or rather, collapsed downward through folding dimensions, plummeting through geometries that tried to hold him but failed to bind him completely. The threshold shrieked, vibrating with an ancient tone of disappointment. "You were ours. You are unfinished. You will carry us still." The voice faded as Jonathan pierced through the final layer. With a gasp like a drowning man breaking the surface, Jonathan slammed back into his physical form. He lay sprawled once more upon the stone floor of the chamber, sweat-drenched, his pulse racing wildly. The threshold before him still pulsed, but now its opening quivered and began to retract, the rupture sealing itself slowly, as though the portal had grown uncertain. But the mark beneath his skin burned hotter than ever. The veins along his arm now glowed steadily, as though a piece of the realm beyond had followed him back. And then, from deep within the membrane, a final whisper reached him, quieter now but clear. "You may have crossed back, but the door is never fully closed." The silence after his return was more terrifying than the voices. Jonathan lay there on the cold stone, chest heaving, his heartbeat thrumming like a war drum inside his ears. The world around him felt alien, not the realm beyond the threshold, but his own world now made unfamiliar, as though reality itself was strained from his passage through the veil. The threshold pulsed in front of him, but weaker now, as if retreating into itself. The fleshy curtain contracted, the unnatural glow dimming beneath its semi-translucent surface. The gaping wound through which he had crossed moments ago was sealing, not in defeat, but in patience. It was never fully closed, never fully gone. Jonathan forced himself upright, his muscles weak and trembling. His entire body ached, not from physical exertion, but from something far more invasive. Like his very cells had been rewritten and reassembled in ways they no longer fully recognized. The glowing lines beneath his skin had not faded. The sigil, once confined to his arm and chest, had now spread across his torso, wrapping his ribs like bioluminescent tendrils. The pattern pulsed with a rhythm that was no longer entirely his own. "You're marked," his mind whispered to itself. "Not cursed, not possessed, but altered." For a moment, the cave grew oppressively still. The walls no longer quivered like breathing flesh. The ambient hum of distant entities faded, replaced by an eerie, heavy silence that pressed against Jonathan's skull like a thick fog. His ears rang with the phantom remnants of voices now quieted. But deep beneath it all, behind that silence, he could still sense the presence watching, waiting. Slowly he gathered his remaining strength. He had to leave this place. His legs felt like brittle glass as he stood, using the slick cavern wall to steady himself. Each breath was sharp and ragged, like inhaling cold steel. Yet some primal instinct pulled him forward, guiding him back through the twisting tunnels that had brought him here. The cavern no longer pulsed as before, but the deeper Jonathan moved toward the exit, the more he realized the cave was not quite as he remembered. The walls had shifted. The tunnels had subtly reformed their geometry, bending at new angles that defied the paths he thought he'd memorized. Branching corridors now led where dead ends once stood, while familiar passages dissolved into spirals that threatened to pull him deeper once more. The threshold was reshaping its domain behind him, or perhaps within him. Jonathan clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. "Don't trust what you see," he whispered to himself. Every shadow threatened to come alive, Shapes twitched in the corners of his peripheral vision, long gliding figures that slipped just out of sight whenever he turned to face them. They weren't truly there. Not yet. Hours, or what felt like hours, dragged by as Jonathan stumbled through the maze of shifting stone and wet, pulsating walls. The sigil beneath his skin burned hotter as he pressed forward, as if the threshold resisted his escape. At last, a faint glimmer of light appeared ahead. The exit. The mouth of the cave. Jonathan burst into the outside world just as the tide had begun to rise again. The gray sky above was thick with clouds, the sun nothing more than a faint glow behind them. The ocean waves clawed at the jagged shoreline, lapping greedily toward the cave's entrance, eager to reclaim it. The salt air struck his lungs like a slap. He dropped to his knees on the rocks, his chest heaving, eyes burning as tears streamed down his face. He had escaped. Somehow, impossibly, he had clawed his way back from the threshold's maw. But as he knelt there, hands pressed against the wet stone, he realized something even more horrifying. The world felt wrong, subtly, indescribably, off. The horizon shimmered. The sea beyond seemed too still. The birds overhead wheeled in unnatural spirals, their flight path looping in strange fractal patterns. The wind carried an odd resonance, as though the very air hummed with the same vibration that still pulsed inside his chest. Jonathan looked down at his arms. The sigil continued to pulse, steady, hungry. And then, from the corner of his vision, movement. He turned sharply toward the cliffs above, heart pounding. Atop the ridge, partially obscured by the curling fog, stood a figure. Tall, motionless. Its silhouette elongated unnaturally, thin arms dangling at its sides. Though the distance made it difficult to discern details, Jonathan could see enough to recognize the unmistakable glow where eyes should be, faintly shining like distant stars reflected in black water. It was not human. It was watching. Jonathan's breath froze in his throat as the figure slowly lifted one long arm, extending it toward him. Not in threat, but in acknowledgement. A silent greeting. A reminder. The threshold had not released him. It had merely let him carry it back. And that was the threshold. A tale of bloodlines, forbidden knowledge, and the price of crossing into places never meant for human minds. Jonathan may have escaped the maw, but some doors, once opened, never truly close. If you enjoyed this descent into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with fellow horror lovers. Your support keeps these dark tales alive. And remember, there are places in this world, and beyond it, that watch back when you stare too long. Sleep well, if you can.